All right, Texas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett took time out of the House Judiciary hearing on immigration visas to insult First Lady Melania Trump and her legal status.
Yeah, Texas Congressman and member of the House Judiciary Committee, Lance Gooden, was at that hearing. He joins us now. And Congressman, I'm just going to read part of what she said in what I would call a very serious hearing on a very serious issue that impacts our country's immigration and ultimately decides who comes into our country. Yet the Congresswoman decides to use her time to say the following. Melania, the First Lady, a model. And when I say model, I'm not talking about Tyra Banks, Cindy Crawford, and Naomi Campbell. You're supposed to have some sort of significant achievement, like being awarded a Nobel Peace Prize or a Pulitzer, being an Olympic medalist, or having other sustained extraordinary abilities and success in sciences, arts, education, business, or athletics.
Listen to this. Representative Jasmine Crockett of Texas actually paused a House Judiciary Committee meeting on immigration visas just to comment on First Lady Melania Trump's immigration background. This hearing was intended to be a heavy, serious debate regarding our nation's border entry policies, yet Crockett chose an entirely different path. She pointed out that Melania is known as a model, but, and this is the fascinating part, she didn't liken her to fashion icons such as Cindy Crawford or Tyra Banks. Rather, Crockett made the case that calling yourself a model ought to require major worldly accomplishments, suggesting things like an Olympic medal or a Nobel Peace Prize. It was definitely a bizarre pivot during such a vital policy debate. However, that wasn't the only headline-making drama. Over on Fox News during a live broadcast, anchor Kayleigh McEnany, typically a staunch defender of Donald Trump, suddenly stood up and abandoned the interview. This was quite a shock, largely because Trump had launched a personal assault against her on air, going as far as labeling her a traitor. She drew a hard line, stating she absolutely refused to stick around and facilitate falsehoods, which is an incredibly courageous choice considering her position.
Good morning, Ainsley. Good morning, guys. So far, the numbers we have show 54 people were shot, 7 fatally. It usually takes a few hours for Chicago police to release the official numbers from the holiday weekend. But you compare those numbers to the 4th of July weekend, in which 44 people were shot, 6 were killed. This is the dynamic that Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker says is not an emergency that warrants the intervention of federal troopers and the National Guard. In fact, Governor Pritzker launched over the weekend the conspiracy theory that Trump is using crime in Chicago to cheat the midterm election.
Other aims are that he'd like to stop the elections in 2026 or, frankly, take control of those elections. He'll just claim that there's some problem with an election, and then he's got troops on the ground that can take control, if, in fact, he's allowed to do this.
While we were keeping an eye out for Chicago's weekend crime statistics, the early numbers were deeply troubling, showing 6 fatalities and a dozen more wounded. It's a turbulent situation that really highlights the severe challenges happening on the ground there. But pivoting back to that live television spectacle, seeing Donald Trump explicitly accuse McEnany of betraying the GOP was truly wild, especially when he hinted that she was on the verge of losing her job. It looked like a complete breakdown on his end. McEnany, who is an experienced broadcaster fully accustomed to navigating hostile interviews, evidently reached her breaking point and took a drastic step. She unclipped her mic, rose from her chair, and completely exited the studio, leaving the cameras to capture Trump still going off on his tirade.
More than 750 murders in the city over the course of 2016. That is more than New York City and Los Angeles combined. Police there now bracing for what could be a bloody New Year's weekend. Mike Tobin live from Chicago with more. Mike, nice to see you. How much worse is it this year than last?
As you mentioned, the rate of shootings, the rate of murders in the city of Chicago is absolutely dramatic, and Chicago police do anticipate an uptick of violence with the holiday weekend. Spokesman says that's because you pour booze on top of this endless cycle of gangland vendettas. As of Thursday, Chicago police reported some 756 murders in the city of Chicago compared to 484 last year. That's an increase of 56%. 3,525 shootings versus 2,400 last year, an increase of 47%. An overwhelming number of the victims are black. Most of the shooting targets are documented gang members. The former Chicago police superintendent, Gary McCarthy, who lost his job in the wake of the Laquan McDonald videotape shooting, says the reason for the increase in the bloodshed is that policing has become politicized and cops are hamstrung.
Demanding the truth, even from your allies, is what journalism is all about. That concept carries immense weight here. It highlights just how tight McEnany used to be with Trump and her history of backing him, but it also demonstrates that she refuses to compromise her professional ethics and reporting standards merely to act as his shield. Making the choice to leave the set was her method of holding her ground. The clip of this incident exploded online, gathering a massive 50 million views. That serves as a glaring indicator that the public is wide awake to the fact that Trump's closest loyalists are actively retreating from his orbit.
Now, Christmas weekend alone, 12 people were killed. 11 of the shooting targets were gangland vendettas, and the reason for the timing is that the gang rivals knew that the targets would be home. Leland?
Unbelievable, Mike. Where is the outrage? Where are the demonstrators? We see them after police-involved shootings. They never seem to come out when there's 11 or 12 people shot over Christmas weekend.
Well, they'll be out this weekend, and Father Michael Pfleger, a well-known activist from the bad areas of Chicago, is going to take the demonstration once again out of the troubled areas and take it to the glitz of Chicago's Magnificent Mile. They're supposed to haul some 700 caskets representing the people who have been killed in Chicago.
This incident hints that Fox News might be entirely altering its approach to Trump, a move that could trigger a massive chain reaction for the media narrative ahead. And this isn't just an isolated glitch. We're seeing other anchors broadcast this exact same shift. Just a couple of days before the McEnany spectacle, Bret Baier pressed Trump with some incredibly tough inquiries that visibly infuriated the former president. Baier abruptly concluded the segment by stating, "We are done here," and just cut the broadcast. Following that, Jesse Watters was forced to cut Trump off mid-interview due to his absolute refusal to engage properly. This just cements the reality that the prominent figures at Fox News have reached their absolute breaking limits. They are publicly declaring their inability to keep backing Trump or covering for his falsehoods, which is an astonishing pivot given the network's long-standing allegiance to him. All of this is unfolding during an exceptionally turbulent period for Trump. He is currently dealing with the resignation of his top lawyer, facing a judge demanding his testimony under the threat of incarceration, and navigating massive scandals involving leaked military secrets. Surveys currently place him 12 points behind in Pennsylvania, while his overall approval ratings have plummeted to a dismal 31%. It genuinely looks like his entire world is caving in all at once. Fox News tried to write off the sudden end of the interview as a mere technical glitch, but behind closed doors murmurs strongly imply a much more profound separation is underway. As I, Dan Chris, continue to monitor this developing situation over at Fox, it is becoming glaringly obvious that even Trump's most enduring media partner is initiating a breakup. Kayleigh McEnany, historically one of his most steadfast defenders, has formally hit a wall and is shouting, "Enough." It is genuinely shocking to watch McEnany, a woman who has shielded Trump countless times through thick and thin, finally establish a hard boundary. She went as far as explicitly stating, "I will not enable lies," which perfectly encapsulates her new mindset. She's finally recognized that adhering to factual reality holds far more weight than blind allegiance to Donald Trump. When a figure of her caliber, a former White House press secretary, decides to walk away, it exposes precisely how dire Trump's circumstances have become. When the diehards start fleeing the sinking ship, you know a monumental shift is in motion. While she was pressing him with some incredibly basic questions regarding his conduct, it's obvious he didn't handle it gracefully. She rightfully brought up alarms regarding the classified Pentagon leaks, covert military actions in Venezuela, and challenged his reluctance to provide sworn testimony. These were incredibly valid questions that any serious reporter ought to be posing to verify the legality and constitutionality of his choices. However, rather than actually answering those concerns, Trump launched a personal tirade against McEnany, branding her a rhino and a traitor, and attacking her loyalty instead of defending his own actions. This entire exchange simply emphasizes how severe his predicament has grown when his most trusted advocates are throwing their hands up in defeat. It's a monumental shift when someone like McEnany concludes she can no longer participate in the charade, and it speaks volumes about the current political climate. The underlying atmosphere at Fox News appears to be changing in a drastically noticeable way. She recently made the choice to abandon the interview rather than argue her stance when Trump aimed his fire at her. It is fascinating to watch someone firmly defend their core values, and frankly, I deeply respect her for valuing her journalistic credibility over her relationship with Trump. Just a brief period prior to that, Bret Baier clashed with Trump on Valentine's Day, and we saw that incredibly tense moment with Jesse Waters that was inexplicably terminated. Then, exactly one day later, McEnany walked off set. 3 massive Fox News hosts colliding with Trump in a 48-hour window is absolutely not a fluke. It's a definitive trend. Fox News, historically recognized as Trump's biggest cheerleader, appears to be executing a calculated maneuver to separate from his brand. Even though the network blamed a technical difficulty for the abrupt interview cutoff, network insiders hint at a much deeper motive. The rumor mill suggests a deliberate strategy to cut ties with Trump, which paints a wildly different picture than the official PR statement. This is a massive blow, given how desperately Trump relies on their platform. If their anchors begin launching harder questions and demanding real accountability, it could entirely shatter his media foundation. Observing this narrative pivot in real time is truly fascinating. Trump is already drowning in hurdles, from tanking poll numbers to alienating top military brass. We are dealing with active Pentagon intelligence leaks, and lawmakers on Capitol Hill are laying the groundwork for an impeachment push. To make matters worse, his primary defense attorney just walked away, compounding the utter disaster as he stares down potential contempt charges and even prison time. And then McEnany drops a bombshell statement refusing to peddle fiction any longer. That is monumental, signaling she is creating a definitive barrier against the deceptive rhetoric synonymous with Trump. It is genuinely staggering to witness the rapid evolution happening at Fox News. It wasn't that long ago that they were entirely committed to Trump, defending his every move. Today, we are witnessing massive fractures in that loyalty. An anchor like McEnany drawing a line in the sand, declaring she cannot tolerate his spread of disinformation, is huge. She is establishing a firm boundary, emphasizing that her professional honor eclipses her duty to protect him. That exact sentiment has echoed across 50 million viewers online. It is guaranteed to dominate the news cycle for the foreseeable future. What is truly remarkable is that she isn't acting in isolation. Several of her Fox colleagues are clearly adopting the exact same mindset. It appears that even his most devoted backers are waking up to the reality that his legal peril, constant falsehoods, and erratic choices are actively repelling the very base trying to keep him afloat. There is an undeniably expanding consensus that it might be time to leave him behind. The transformation at Fox News is critical because it establishes a brand new standard. It demonstrates to rival networks that confronting Trump carries no real penalty anymore. It emboldens the press corps to dig deeper and ask uncompromising questions about his inner circle. This pivot delivers a stark warning that pulling back and refusing to offer unquestioning loyalty is entirely acceptable now. When a prominent ally like McEnany publicly disavows the deceit, the implications are massive. It represents a watershed moment, not purely for Trump's viability as a politician, but for his overall public image. If he is stripped of the primary megaphone he uses to broadcast his talking points and rally his base, he is in for a catastrophic awakening. Furthermore, the most jarring detail is that 3 distinct Fox hosts aired their frustrations with Trump over a mere 2-day span. That stretches far beyond mere coincidence. It reeks of a highly orchestrated pivot. The network is unmistakably executing a proactive choice to walk away from Donald Trump, and the gravity of that cannot be overstated. Once that dam begins to fracture, we are practically guaranteed to witness a flood of former allies distancing themselves and publicly condemning his rhetoric. Trump is undeniably navigating extremely perilous waters right now, particularly as the impeachment momentum accelerates. The reality that Fox News, his most crucial media asset, is actively retracting its shield is incredibly damaging. A media pivot of this magnitude drastically complicates his survival strategy, as losing their airspace deprives him of his most effective tool to deflect criticism and dictate the news cycle. Truthfully, it's surreal to even imagine Fox News daring to hold his feet to the fire. His voters depend almost exclusively on that network for their worldview, so watching the channel turn hostile toward him is bound to create massive ripples. Voters may actually start second-guessing his competence, and that is a massive consequence. This is about much more than Kayleigh McEnany abandoning an interview. It signifies a broader, sweeping trend where the mainstream conservative media is overhauling its approach to Trump. Amidst all this chaos, he has hit a genuine breaking point, and the timing is absolutely abysmal, especially with lawmakers gearing up for an imminent impeachment vote. As Congress prepares to act, Trump is forced to watch his media armor dissolve. Even Fox's affection is freezing over, undoubtedly compounding his anxiety. His top lawyer vanished, his polling numbers are sinking, and he's trailing badly in the essential battleground states. Add to that the military establishment pushing back alongside Pentagon staff, leaking classified intel right as Capitol Hill prepares to vote. He is trapped in an incredibly harsh reality, feeling completely abandoned by the press, his legal defense, and the armed forces leadership. This level of exposure strongly suggests Congress will proceed with the impeachment, and if the current trajectory holds, the Senate might genuinely vote for a conviction. It feels as though his entire ecosystem is collapsing. The thread really began to unravel that Sunday evening when Kayleigh McEnany marched off the set of Fox News Sunday, cementing what will likely be remembered as a historic crossroads in his political career. What we are observing today is a spectacular paradigm shift as his structural support disintegrates. It is frankly astonishing to see him bleed out so many foundational pillars of backing. Right now, the core institutions of our government appear to be mobilizing to demand accountability, which is a massive development. We could realistically witness the 25th Amendment being triggered if he somehow clings to power, though it's anyone's guess how long he could even survive that. This entire ordeal is truly unprecedented, and the blame falls squarely on Trump's own hubris. He simply pushed the boundaries too aggressively and completely disregarded the constitutional guardrails placed on his office. Now, the blowback is arriving with full force, causing even his most uncompromising loyalists to walk away. Kayleigh's choice to place her professional honor above her loyalty to Trump is a monumental action that is motivating other reporters and fundamentally altering the press narrative. It is reshaping public perception and heavily exacerbating his political nightmare. As your host, Dan Criss, I can confidently say this is a defining chapter that demands our full attention because the situation is only going to escalate from here.